Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Talking Success. Our guest today, we hadn't met before up until about a couple of weeks ago, where we were at the Seamless Africa event in Johannesburg, and we were on the keynote panel to kick off the event. And it was myself, Mohammed, and another gentleman as well from India. We were talking about sort of the future of banking and the future of finance. We were given 20 minutes, and just as we were wrapping up those 20 minutes, there was kind of a blind panic at the back going, no, you've got to keep going another 20 minutes. So we had to think on our feet. And I was delighted to have Mohammed with me because he made my job so much easier when we were talking about sort of all things sort of fintech and all things sort of digital banking. Today, I would like to uncover and unpack the world of Islamic banking. Despite having lived in the UAE for 7 years or so, been exposed to the Islamic culture and what have you, I still don't really understand all the intricacies around Islamic banking. So I reached out to Mohammed and said, look, I'd love to have you on to talk about the fundamentals behind Islamic banking, but also looking to the future and looking at sort of technology innovations, integrations, whatever it may be, and the future of Islamic banking. So please, enjoy this episode. I'm set to learn a lot. So for selfish reasons, I'm looking forward to this episode. But I'm going to hand over quickly to Mohammed to give a quick intro, tell us a little bit about him and where he works and what he does. He gave me some great travel advice just before we came on as well. So in the diary is a trip to Uplanga. I think that's how you pronounce it. And Mohammed, lovely to have you on. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you're a busy man. So thank you. Tell us a little bit about you and your background and what it is you do at Baraka Bank.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for that introduction and good morning and welcome to the guests. I think, as you indicated, we had a good chat at Seamless, and I'm looking forward to chatting to you a little bit about Islamic banking, a little bit about Al Baraka, and a little bit about the fintech and the stuff that we're doing as well on our side. For my sins, I decided to study accountancy and I qualified as a chartered accountant. I got very quickly bored in the auditing profession and I decided to venture off. I come from a little town up in Johannesburg, and Al Baraka Bank was going through a recapitalization, and an investment firm had taken shares in the bank, and the CEO had come across to do a pitch and address an AGM of that investment firm. And I sat there one day listening to this, and I said, "Hang on, this is sounds very interesting. It's up my alley. It's got to do with accounting and everything else that I've studied. Let me go and have a chat with this guy." And he told me 3 times, "Please don't come and work for us. We're too small. You CAs come here and you get frustrated and you don't want to stay for a long time. And then we invest in this." And I said, "I'll shake your hand. I'll give you 2 years of my life. Let me learn something. Let's see how it goes." 18
Okay.
years down the line, I'm still with the bank. I've done a lot in the bank itself. We head office in Durban. So I moved across from Johannesburg to Durban. The bank's been around for over 30 years, pioneered Islamic banking
Okay.
in South Africa. And in my roles, I've played a finance role, I've played an audit role, I've played a forex role, I played a sales role, and now I play a sales together with digital role. As the world of banking is evolving, my CIO often tells us we're no longer banks, we are IT companies providing bank services. So we've looked at it also from our side and said you can't be a sales team just selling. You need to be a sales team with digital.
Mhm.
So in my portfolio, I've got the guys that deal with the retail space. I've got the guys that deal with the SME and the corporate space, your business banking, your cross-border, so all of those, and wealth, all of those revenue streams. And then I've got the GM digitalization, who helps us achieve a lot of wonderful things and is spearheading all the tech stuff that we're doing in the bank. So
Wow.
nice portfolio to look after and a nice organization to work in. Always fun to work in a small bank.
Absolutely. Well, 18 years, clearly it is. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be there. So that's great. Mohammed, before we get into the sort of intricacies around sort of the future of Islamic banking and some of the innovations and what the future holds, for our audience and actually, quite frankly, for me, for us who perhaps don't really understand, well, you've heard the term Islamic banking, but we don't really understand, or I certainly don't understand, again, the intricacies involved. Could you give us a kind of a 101 on what Islamic banking is? And sort of where it fits, sort of within the financial services ecosystem.
Sure. So I think that's a good starting point. And a lot of people will call Islamic banking ethical banking. I prefer not to do that because, by contra of it, it means all the other banking is not ethical, and we don't want to do that to the industry or anything like that. So my personal approach on this is it's principle-led banking, right? And the reason why it's principle-led is that as a believer in the faith of Islam and as a Muslim, we are dictated to by certain tenets. Our holy book is the Quran, and our prophet is the Prophet Muhammad. And during his lifespan, and in the Quran, there's certain principles that we need to follow. One of that is the prohibition of interest. And the Quran says it very nicely in that people will say interest is like profit and say no, profit is profit and interest is different. So interest is defined as a return on money, whereas profit is defined as a return on trading. And Islamic banking is effectively around that principle. We don't deal in interest. We deal on the basis of cooperative. So we take in deposits, but our depositors are actually participants in the bank. We trade with those deposits and we earn a return and we share that return. There is a risk that is taken in that deposits as well, and depositors have a risk of loss, which is very different to what you would have in a bank. Yes, you can lose money in banks when banks go bust in that, but in Islamic banking, the concept of risk is much more in there. Now, that extends very nicely when you come out of things like a COVID pandemic. So in South Africa, and I think probably across the globe, when COVID hit and businesses had to go into these lockdowns and we didn't know what's going to happen because you had installments that needed to be paid, but as a
Sure.
business, you weren't trading. So what's going to happen in this thing? We as bankers had to learn a term that was called a payment holiday, right? And banks don't give holidays, but we had to give that.
Yeah.
As an Islamic bank, we couldn't charge you any additional penalty for that period that you couldn't pay us. Whereas if you were in a conventional space, the interest just kept on ticking over and that went up. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where you see real differentiations that come in. We also experienced a sudden drop in interest rates in the market because governments tried what they knew best. They reapplied the QE card that they played in 2008 when we had the
Yeah.
housing crisis. And with that, rates dropped. But in Islamic banks, rates did drop as well because some of our transactions reprice. But because there's a profit sharing, the amount of the impact of a rate decrease was probably less in an Islamic banking space than what it would have been in a conventional space because it's sharing the profit, and as the profit rates decrease, you have to share in the decrease. You can't just keep your interest margin the same as what happens in a conventional bank space. So your fundamental difference is that of interest. Your fundamental difference is that of profit sharing. And then other fundamentals that come in is that if you're doing a loan, then you don't charge interest. So we do benevolent loans. We do things for charities, etc. But typically, all our transactions need to be asset backed to be able to generate a profit. So you don't typically have an overdraft. You do have an Islamic credit card, but that is typically a benevolent loan that is given to a consumer, and the bank has to then earn its return on interchange or earn its return through fees, etc., but not really money on money. And
Okay.
that is also why Islamic banking was touted as a savior during the housing crisis, because there needs to be an actual asset, there needs to be valuations, you're in partnership when you're doing a finance transaction. So even in a housing bubble, you can't go in and give 110% loan to value. You have to give something less than 100% because there needs to be a partnership involved in this. So those are all
Understood. Yeah.
the sort of principles that differentiates us from a conventional bank, and
Hmm.
that obviously provides opportunities for people to bank without compromising their beliefs. And one of the most important things is that Islamic banking is not only for people of the Islamic faith, it's open to anybody that wants to sort of look at something different. Um, just again, picking up from our lessons of COVID, a fair portion of the Islamic banking requires adherence to a principle that there's certainty in the transaction. So a lot of our transactions are actually fixed price. And if you entered into a transaction 3 years ago when rates were quite low, and you've done your motor vehicle and it's a 5-year transaction and it's fixed price, today you're smiling because although interest rates have gone up, there hasn't been an impact to your expenses or your monthly installment. So the product offering is available to masses.
Mm.
It was differentiated in South Africa because there's a community, there's a demand for it. Al
Sure.
Baraka was the first bank around 30 odd years. I think it's probably now 34 years that we've been in existence. But what's good is, like you would have experienced in the Middle East, since the 2008 crisis and the fact that Islamic banking sort of was very strong through that, a lot of the conventional banks have looked at it and said, hang on, there's a market here. There's people that believe in this. There's
Sure.
opportunities to make profit out of this. And in the South African context, we've got the big three out of the four that are involved in Islamic banking. The fourth one is doing some things in the background. We know that they've appointed a head of Islamic banking. And I think barring Capitec, the others are all now playing in that space or have an intention to play in that space.
Great. Okay. Thank you. I've got some questions, if I may. And excuse
Yes.
my ignorance if these seem rudimentary. How does the bank then make money from a consumer? I'm not talking about the merchant side here. We'll come on to that shortly. But me as an individual, if I banked with you and I wanted a credit card, you said there was no interest. So is there like fixed fees that I have to pay for the credit card or a transaction fee? Is that how that works?
So I'm going to say our primary sort of business is in
Yeah.
your asset financing, your motor vehicle residential property.
Right.
In
Okay.
our context, we also have commercial property. We have a working capital solution, which is called trade finance.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of asset and fleet finance, right? And under those type of transactions, so 99% of the bank's sort of financing will be asset based. You'll have a very
Okay.
small portion which will be credit card. In fact, to be brutally honest, we're still busy developing our credit card offering for Al Baraka South Africa, but the product is available in some of our fellow subsidiaries. And that is actually the reason why I ended up in Seamless. The service
Okay.
provider came down and invited us, and that's where it all snowballed, and we got an invitation to speak. But
Right.
yeah, typically you'll do an asset transaction. If you're
Okay.
doing a vehicle or you're doing a fleet or something like that, you've got two types of transactions. You can do a fixed price. We buy, we add a profit, we sell, and your installment is known upfront, and that's the life of the transaction.
Okay.
There's also a rental one. So we buy, we lease the product, the asset to you, and we recover rental over that. And effectively, that's where we make our profit. And those rentals or those fixed prices are typically driven by what the market is, right? So if your market prime rates are sitting at 11.75 as they are kind of, then our profit margin would be very similar to that.
Okay. Okay. Understood. So it's not necessarily free banking. I just wanted to make that very clear to people because
No,
you
it's not
tend to
free
do
banking. We are a
just as
profit-making
something that everybody's going to,
organization.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But a bank's still there to make some profit. Okay. And then my understanding, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the types of assets or the types of investments that an Islamic bank makes to be sort of Sharia compliant, they need to be ethical investments, correct? So, for example, if we look at something like crypto, and I'm not mentioning any specific coins here, but if there was a crypto project or a DeFi project that supported something that was against Islam or sort of haram, that wouldn't then be invested in by the bank. Is that correct? And then there's kind of a group of scholars that sort of assess that. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so we have what is called a Sharia board, and
Okay,
basically Sharia is the Arabic term for a way of life, and it comes back down to the tenets of the religion, right? The Quran and the life of the Prophet,
sure.
essentially, and there are other aspects to it. But so you have these scholars that have unpacked that and understood it, and they then provide guidance because things are different and you may have something that's unique and new today. There are certain things that are completely off the table. Adult entertainment off the table, alcohol off the table, gambling off the table. So
Mhm.
those type of things immediately fall out. And then you have the things that become sort of questionable, and that's when they apply themselves and say, okay, hang on, what is this? How does it work? What's the purpose? What's the underlying thing? And I mean, a lot of people talk about ESG, right? And
Yeah.
that's it's the tenets and fundamentals of what we do as well. We've always been bearing the ESG flag. In fact, we've got a partnership with a large unit trust company or mutual, and um, their Al Baraka Sharia funds are now marketed as ESG funds because it
Wow.
meets the requirements of what people would typically want to do, get involved in. And again, those type of principles fall in terms of saying if you've got a company that's highly debt driven, it sort of falls away because it becomes the concept is that you shouldn't be paying interest, so you're not going to invest in a company that's highly driven by debt.
Okay. It makes complete sense. And what's maybe your bank or what's Islam's view on things like crypto? Because and we'll look at maybe in a South African context where it's becoming regulated. Um, it isn't necessarily asset backed, although there is an argument, for and against that. Is there a global view? Is there a sort of a regional view? Where does that sit? Because I think some people could argue that actually, investing in a cryptocurrency, given its volatility and given its not necessarily regulated, could be seen as a gamble. So,
You hit it on the head. So
yeah,
that's
where does that
exactly.
sit?
So I think the concept of money being backed. I mean, we know that the gold standard and it has fallen away, and that. So I think that isn't so much an issue. But the big issue that comes in is the speculative nature about it. And
Mm,
there are sort of differentiating views. When it was a very hot topic, we hosted a webinar on that and a panel discussion. And there are scholars that are for it, there are scholars that are against it. I think as it becomes regulated and as it becomes less speculative, it will become more acceptable in the economy. If it
right.
doesn't get regulated and if it doesn't have sort of removal of that speculativeness, and I want to be very clear about this, your rand dollar rate moves up and down. So it's not only about volatility in terms of exchange rate, but it's really about that speculative nature that we've seen in crypto. That's where the sort of views are that, you know what, stay away from it. But what we're finding is that the world evolves. And if, I mean, paper really doesn't exist anymore, right? The money doesn't sit in vaults, it sits in computers.
Yep.
And if you move from one type of electronic currency to another type of electronic currency, as long as it has all the values that go with it and the protection around it, It cannot be non-compliant.
Mm, okay, makes total sense. You mentioned regulations and compliance. Um, Perhaps in the Middle East or in the Islamic countries where there's a real understanding of Islamic banking and Sharia laws and what have you. When you're looking at South Africa or you're looking at other markets that aren't Muslim countries, is there a lot of work that needs to be done with the regulator, whether it be the SARB or whether it be the FSCA or whether it be another regulator, to educate them on why Islamic banking A is different, but B how the business model works so differently from other banks or traditional banks. Is that an obstacle, or is that actually quite straightforward? Is there a massive awareness now, or I suppose the question is, how do you work with regulators?
So Darren, I think we're very fortunate. I doubt you'll find a banker in South Africa that will say the Reserve Bank doesn't work with their financial institutions that they monitor. So we've got a very strong regulator, and I think we're very proud about the fact that the regulator is strong in South Africa, and they do apply themselves. So you've got to work with them. Coincidentally, and I don't know if you just fluked this out, but we actually have the regulator on a Zoom session in another room next door, and
Really? No,
where
I didn't know that.
they actually wanted to find out more about the products, etc., because you're getting more of the windows that are coming through. It's
Cool.
public
Okay.
news at this moment in time. The government is looking at issuing a rand-denominated sukuk to be able to draw funding from different markets. So it's taken a while in South Africa. We obviously haven't been at the forefront of it in terms of global, but we've been at the forefront it from an Africa perspective. And
Yeah.
the regulator was bold enough 30 odd years ago to give us a license. They have, from a national treasury perspective, the tax legislations were amended, if memory serves me, around 2009 to recognize Islamic transactions and the tax effect of these transactions so that they were aligned to what the tax effect of an interest based transaction would be. So there's no sort of the prohibitive or extra costs of trying to do an Islamic finance transaction as compared to doing a normal financing transaction. Then
Okay.
we've had the regulator issue the dollar sukuk, which I think was done somewhere in 2013, 2014, if memory serves me. That was a very successful issuance, and now we've got the regulator looking at a rand sukuk. So I think we're heading in the right track. I must also compliment the FSCA. Um, I spoke about the unit trust space,
Yeah.
and a number of years ago, um, because companies, especially in the on the JSC, would have a portion of what we would have deemed impermissible income. So a company, no matter how correct its product offering is, so example, a cellular provider, they're doing everything
Mhm.
correct, but they hold balances in a bank and they would earn interest on that. So when we look at their dividend ratios and their income, we do what we call a purification, and we remove the interest element from the net profit
Right.
or from the dividend. In most instances, we remove it from the net profit, and then we we advise the unit trust holder that, or we used to advise the unit trust holder that from your returns, so much you need to give it away in charity because there's a question on that earning. Um, our Sharia board a good few years ago, and this is, if I'm not mistaken, as far back as 2000 in the 2000s, right? I don't even remember exactly where about that. Um, Told us go and engage with the regulator. They weren't known as the FISCA at that time; they were the FSP or whatever they held at that point, and go and ask them permission to be able to remove that at source so that you take the responsibility away from the unit trust holder and that
Mhm.
whatever they earn then is completely pure. And the legislation was changed back then to allow for that. So, again, coming back to your point about is it effort? There's effort. I mean, everything requires some work, but we've got
Sure.
really competent regulators that are willing to work with us for the benefit of the community.
Okay. Um, let's move on to digitization. You mentioned that the bank is going through sort of digital transformation. Lots of questions around this, and I promise I won't go technical. I promise. Okay, so no mention of blockchains or anything like that. Or I might. But is there any difference when you're looking at a digital transformation journey as an Islamic bank versus you're looking at a digital transformation as a non-Islamic bank? Are there any specific considerations, or not?
I don't think there's a differentiator. I think probably in the Islamic space, because you've got additional compliance layers that need to apply. The
Yeah,
digitalization or the digital transformation journey actually is a lot more appetizing to an Islamic bank, because we spend a lot of time on controls to ensure that whatever we're trying to do is 100% compliant from a
sure.
Sharia perspective. And we obviously know that these digital transformation journeys makes your compliance journey a lot more easier. So I wouldn't say it's more difficult. I would actually say it's more appealing in the Islamic space. There's a lot more that you can use from a digital, and you can use blockchain for it. But I'm not going to go into the technical sides.
No, I know you won't. I know you won't. You give me a warning beforehand. That's fine. So give us some ideas in terms of the digital transformation program at Al Baraka. What does that consist of? Given the nature of the bank that you are.
So our digital transformation journey has got four major aspects. There's the connectivity side, there's an
Mhm.
automation side, there's decisioning, and then there's innovation. So this is being driven down by our parent. Come down. We've got a nice, lovely acronym, CADI, for it, and we then look at
Paddy.
everything in our system and say, um, are you going to improve connectivity with your client? So, taking anything that would be paper based, taking anything
Mhm.
that may have been audio based only, and converting that to giving a client full digital, omni channel, the fancy word that everyone uses,
Sure.
capability of
Mhm.
connecting with your client. Then you look at
Okay.
everything that's being done manually, and how do you automate that? And I mean, it started with robotics,
Mhm.
and it's now moved over to stuff like regenerative AI. So those are nice little places where you can automate. And then decisioning comes in as well. And again, regenerative AI makes life a lot more easier. Robotic
Yep.
processes make life a lot more easier. And then the blue ocean stuff, the going really out there and looking at how do you innovate, what do you do, which will take you and differentiate you from the rest of the financial institutions that play in the market.
Fantastic. You mentioned, oh, there's loads of questions. Before I unpack those, we've spoken about the sort of retail consumer or the consumer. You mentioned at the very beginning of the conversation you've got sort of a merchant base as well. When you talk about digital transformation, are you looking at both sets of customers, so both merchant and customer?
Yeah, so to
Consumer?
clarify, we don't play in the POS acquiring space, but we do have clients. So we have SME, we have corporate, and we have retail. And I think when we look at digital,
Yeah.
I think I used this term with you at Seamless, right? But we sort of work towards what we're calling phygital. It's a combination of physical and digital.
Yep.
And consumers, the day-to-day people like you and I, we don't walk into banks anymore, right? We want to do everything digitally. You want to sit at 12 o'clock in the evening and decide, hang on, I need to open up that investment account for my kid, or I need to do something here, and you want to be able to do that at that time. And that's only going to be possible on a digital space, right? You're not going to have some call center agent sitting there at 12 o'clock at night waiting to service you. Um,
Sure.
if you go to your business approach and your sort of clientele that are involved in actual business, they need that physical touch. Yes, they still need an element of digital. You want the best in class technical experience and the security and everything else when you're dealing with your transactions. but you want to sit face to face with a person. You want to be able to have a discussion around a project, and you want to go out there and see the prospectus of what that project is going to entail. And we often tease the GM that I have that looks after the corporate space. He goes out and he has a knack of always finding rain wherever he goes to. So he comes back with muddied shoes. And that's what you want to do. You actually want to go out there, get mud on your shoes, because then you've been there. You can see there's a gut feel. So that's the physical part. And again, it's that physical and digital. You got to have both. You can't sort
Yeah.
of just play in a digital space.
No, I guess there's people, banks, financial services organization, fintechs, that are going pure digital, right? So there is no human contact. And I had an experience, no, quite a number of years ago. So things that I'm sure have changed with a bank in the UK who were a digital bank, still are a digital bank, and I had some inwards funds coming in, and the funds mysteriously got lost. Do you think I could speak to a human? No. And the response I actually got on a chat message, I think I've still got it somewhere because it was just so crazy. I took a screenshot. It was, it's our company policy not to speak to customers. No, no, no. This has gone way too far. Way, way, way too far. Anyway, I must say, I had another issue about 6, 7 months ago, and I could speak to a human being. So clearly, they took my advice. It may have been something with a viral post that I put on LinkedIn. But anyway, so I think there is that blend. I think if you're buying a widget on an online store for $50 and it doesn't arrive, or there's an issue with the order, I don't mind going onto a messenger thing. But if it's 50,000 rand that somehow goes missing in a transaction, I want to speak to a human being, right? So I think that digital space certainly plays well to me. Mohammed, if we wind the clock forward a little bit and we look at maybe Baraka Bank, or we look at Islamic banking sort of more generally, what does the future hold? Are there any specific technologies or innovations that are maybe specific to Islamic banking? And you mentioned decisioning, and you mentioned obviously the scholars that assess various different assets and investments. Do you think things like that could be digitized again with generative AI? If you're if you're feeding the AI engine, the laws, the Sharia laws, and it becomes very well researched on Islam. Is there a point where actually those decisions could be made by machine? Or is that, again, is that sort of anti, or is that sort of haram? Or what's the view on that?
So this is my personal one, and I'm probably going to, when this goes out, somebody's going to text. So I want to clarify
18
it's
years might
not.
come to an end very shortly, yeah, Mohammed?
No, no, no. I want to differentiate from the brand at this point in time, right? I don't have my
Sure.
logo on or anything like this. But
Yeah.
I think, look, Darren, the reality of it is digital is going to happen, whether we like it or we don't like it, right? So
Yeah.
that is a reality. Regenerative AI is a reality. There's people that are very scared about it, and you have every right to be scared about it.
Mhm.
But it's got its benefits. Now, um, when you look at certain aspects, one of the biggest challenges that a bank has is reach. You would have had the issue around brick and mortar being able
Mhm.
to access. We've got 6 branches across the country. There's
Right.
South Africa is a large country, and if you sitting in Pofadder and you will need to have any sort of opportunity to invest or open up an account or transact according to your principles and your beliefs. Um, Prior to 2009, it was a bit of a schlep. Everything happened with COVID, the digitalization boost. Now
Yeah.
you can log on to a Teams call and we'll open up an account for you. In a couple of months' time, we'll have what other banks have already got, the ability to onboard yourself digitally. Um, so I think the first benefit of digitalization and fintech is it creates accessibility. And you mentioned it at Seamless. It's a global thing. It's an African thing. Financial inclusion or the lack of financial inclusion. And I think when I opened up, I spoke about trust. And yeah, it may be financial inclusion, but it's about creating that trust. It's about giving access to that brand. So people through digital initiatives and through fintech will have access to Islamic banking. First thing, that's the biggest thing that comes out from it. The
Sure.
second thing is um, we see it in our daily operations. Any compliance driven activity is going to have people that are going to come back and ask the same question differently, or they're going to repeat the same question, or you're going to have a new person repeating that same question. That's where regenerative AI can make your life a lot more easier, right? You don't need to have humans going back and saying, yes, we answered this question 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. It's instantaneous. And
Mm,
that's where
mm,
it really makes a big difference. I did say I don't want to talk about blockchain, but I have to talk about the fact that all from a Sharia perspective, it's all about ensuring the integrity of a transaction. So it's asset based. Firstly, it has to be asset based, but we all know that you have clients or you have opportunists that will try and do something that's not going to be right because at the end of the day, money is money, right? People will want it, they'll need it, whatever it is. Through your blockchain, you have the capability of ensuring that you protect these type of transactions and you remove any sort of opportunity for non-compliance. So whether it's reach, whether it's AI, whether it's using the technology itself to protect the transactions, the opportunities are endless. And I think there's a huge potential for Islamic banking,
mm.
and there's a huge potential for financial institutions, and there's a huge potential for the consumer through all of the fintech stuff that comes out from you.
It's exciting times. Just to give some context, how many, what's the Muslim population of South Africa, roughly? Do you know what that is?
Uh, so I think the official state will probably be around 2 million of South Africans that are Muslim.
Wow.
Through the Banking Association, we
Yeah.
know that there's approximately 70 billion rand worth of deposits that uh, comprise around the windows and the Islamic banking ourselves. So the market is quite big. If you take
Yeah.
that and you add on the unit trust space, I think it
Sure.
goes up to around 100 billion rand. So it's a nice size market. I mean, it's not the biggest, but for a non-Muslim country, it's a decent size market.
Fantastic. Uh, just before we go, you mentioned actually you took a question that I had for you, and you answered it straight away. So thanks for that. I was going to ask you about sort of accessibility to people that aren't Muslim, and you very eloquently said that the bank is open to kind of anyone. Does what does that mean though? I mean, me as a non-Muslim coming into wanting to set up a bank account with Al Baraka Bank. There's certain things I need to agree to in terms of the principles of Islam, or is it just another bank account just with a different suite of products? How does that work?
So, Darren, it depends on the product itself that you're looking at, right?
Okay.
Because if you're looking at a transactional banking account, it's
Yeah.
really no difference that's going to happen in there. We do have certain restrictions on MCC code, so you might not be able to stop at your local bottle store and use the card.
Okay.
That's the
Fair
type
enough.
of things that we do have put in play. If you're looking at consumer finance like a motor vehicle, you're actually going to come out if you choose something that's fixed rate. I told you, you got the rental or the fixed one.
Yeah.
There's really no difference. It would be as comparable as if you were taking a fixed rate interest transaction at a conventional bank.
Mm.
And we have clients that do it with us because banking is not only about the money, it's about the service, right? And being a smaller
Yeah.
bank, we're able to offer sometimes personalized service.
Mm.
We have non-Muslim clients that deal with us on a trade finance side. And again, they just look at it on the basis of saying, hang on, I've got a very comparable product. I know it's not an overdraft, so I'm not going to get tempted to dip into this and go on holiday. And I think those are the sort of benefits that there are. I want to touch on a brief history on the bank, and I know we're almost out of time.
Please. No, please
But
do.
when I moved across from Johannesburg to Durban, I headed up the Forex retail business. So that's notes, people buying currency to travel overseas for a nice little holiday.
Yeah.
And one of the principles, the Sharia principles, is that if I sell you something, the price that I charge you is the price that I have to charge you. I can't say I'm selling it to you and make a profit in the sale and charge you a commission, because then I'm double dipping type of thing, right?
Right.
So
Okay.
we all know the Forex notes market is typically a price. You see it on the board. It's not what the interbank price is. So there's a profit element in there, and then there's a commission. And we were not allowed to charge the commission. It became the biggest marketing campaign under the sun. Buy your
Right.
currency with 0% commission. 50% of our customer base on the Forex notes business pre-COVID were non-Muslims, because it was a no-brainer. I mean, you got
Yeah.
two options. You got one that's going to charge you more, one that's not going to charge you more. There's no differentiation between that. So I think there's some real benefits for clients that are looking at doing it differently. I don't really believe there's much compromises that you have to make, particularly if you're somebody that's going to look at it and say, ESG, that ticks my sort of idea. I'm not into the things that typically you'd label syntaxes or those type of things. So yeah, that's about it.
Well, Mohammed, I must say, enlightening. I've learned so much, and I hope everyone listening has as well. I think it sounds quite a complex, to a layman, it sounds quite a complex area of banking. You've very eloquently unraveled this a lot for me, and I hope for everyone else listening today. It's principle led banking in its essence, and that's really what this is. So, Mohammed, thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation. If people want some more information on the bank, are interested in some of the things you've said, clearly there's a website, albaraka.co.za. Is that correct? Yep.
That's it.
And then I know your team are super responsive. They've been super responsive to me. So LinkedIn probably is a good channel to find you guys on as well.
LinkedIn, we on all the social media channels, Al Baraka SA. That's generally the handle all across. And yeah, if anyone's got any questions about it, if you're looking at researching, we've got a nice sort of what is type of thing that's sort of
Okay.
agnostic from any bank product and just tells you what the processes are. And we always willing to have a chat, Darren. It's always nice chatting to you. So if there's any opportunities to have a chat about Islamic banking, it allows people an option, right? And I like the fact that I've convinced you that it's only principles. That's all that it is. There's nothing more. It's nothing less to it. It's just about a set of principles that we follow.
Well, I've learned a lot. Thank you. I will put some links in the description below. If anyone would like to do some more research on Islamic Bank and Al Baraka Bank, and maybe reach out to Mohammed as well. We've run out of time. I did want to sort of ask you about sort of partners and integrations and what have you, but we can maybe save that for version 2 or release 2. When I'm sure I'd love to get you back on again, Mohammed, and A, find out how the digital transformation journey kind of is going, and B, maybe unwrap some other sort of intricacies around Al Baraka Bank, around you and Islamic banking. But until then, Mohammed, thank you again. Thank you for your team for scheduling this, and I wish you all the well. And I'll see you soon, no doubt. Some conference, some stage, somewhere on the continent.
Thanks, Darren. Hopefully in Mpumalanga, in the Kruger, because you need to put that onto your bucket list.
No, I know. It's got to go on the
But
bucket list. There's
thanks.
a few other things as well. I still haven't been up Table Mountain, even though I lived there for 9 years, but it's on the list to do. Thank you again, Mohammed. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Darren.